and welcome back to After Dark Arts. I'm joined here by Ron, the winner of the 2019 Time Turner Prize for his video art installation Harry Potter and the Nice Bit of Battenberg Trim. Critics have commented on the piece, saying it is remarkably poetic. This is the best thing I have ever seen, and I like Battenberg. And we've been discussing his latest work of video art, which is simply titled Ron Interviewed on Late Night Arts Show. A very metatextual piece which depicts yourself and myself engaging in a discussion on a parody of a British late-night television show from the early 90s on a parody of a British late-night television show from the early 90s.
Yes, that's right.
So you trained as an oil painter, and yet you've chosen the medium of animation, specifically a crudely animated internet cartoon about yourself being in a crudely animated internet cartoon about yourself escaping from a different crudely animated internet cartoon.
Yes, it's about the current state of the world.
Can you tell us why you've chosen this particular medium to tackle the current state of the world?
Because history painting is history. The death of Marat is dead. Jacques-Louis David has been ousted by every person who stands next to a breaking news story with a phone camera in their hand, and Horatio would now be swearing their oath on a bundle of selfie sticks.
Okay, can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
No, I don't think so.
So, are you participating in a trend of solipsistic art, or are you lampooning it?
I would say I'm simply swimming with the tide of the zeitgeist, Tom. Though these days I fear I may be swimming into a maelstrom of sorts. There is momentum within the creative media world, but it feels like a more circular motion than a forward one. Here in the early 21st century, the cultural landscape has been mapped and remapped a seemingly infinite number of times. All available external spaces have already been discovered and colonised by previous generations, and I find that as a result of this, the exploratory phase of early adulthood has, for us digital natives, taken a decidedly inward-facing tack. On the great smartphone sea of information, the archetypal hero's journey has transcended the Argonaut and made hypnagogic cybernauts of us all.
What exactly do you mean by that?
We are social media spectrophiles in relationships with ghosts behind glass screens. But unfortunately, I believe this particular brand of soft isolation is indicative of exactly the kind of behavioural sink that precedes a total societal collapse. I always thought it was fairly clear that that was the intended meaning behind these Harry Potter internet cartoons.
So, to put it in layman's terms, this project of yours is much more than simply an animated auto-fictive Kunstlerroman, which is what many critics have suggested.
Yes.
And this undercurrent of impending doom and hopelessness is reflected in the jarringly melancholy moments peppered throughout Harry Potter and the Nice Bit of Battenberg Trim.
Yes, I wanted to reflect the sense of existential despondency that I feel when I consider the fact that my entire existence is simply a semi-ironic subversion of a mass media product. So the piece you're talking about is in fact what I would call a subversion of that subversion. I wanted to push the level of absurdity until it could break free from the bonds of dry postmodern irony and conjure up a sense of indefinable profundity. Perhaps paradoxically through the self-conscious banality of the whole thing. And speaking of self-consciousness, the fictional character who is me is, within the video, aware of the fact that he is a bastardised parody of another fictional character, and his entire world is, once again, coming to the end of its natural existence in the final seconds of the video. He is the only character burdened with this knowledge, and so his experience of reality is a very lonely and empty one. I believe this reflects a general unspoken mood prevalent within the collective unconscious of prematurely blasé and disillusioned young people living in a society where technology has made seclusion the norm. This was also intended to mirror the medium of distribution.
How so?
Well, it's up on the internet. This is all being played out en masse, and yet the vast majority of the viewers will watch the piece by themselves. We have this extraordinary technology, which is almost like magic, but we rarely consume this kind of media in a communal setting. And when the discussion is limited to digital responses, well then we're really missing out on a potential auxiliary learning experience through non-verbal group stimuli.
Hence the breaking of 1,000 magical educations.
Hence the breaking of 1,000 magical educations, yes.
So would I be right in interpreting this ending within an ending as being intended to parallel the cultural self-destruction that you propose we're going through as a result of a mass behavioral sink? I don't actually believe we're going through any kind of cultural self-destruction or behavioral sink. I don't know where you got that idea. My personal view is that everything is simply cyclical. Take, for example, the way that Western architecture constantly shifts between Gothic and classical influences. The reason we have this sense of dissonance now is that the cyclical process has accelerated beyond comprehension. We are living in a cultural centrifuge. But I'm more interested in the fact that around 80% of the Battenberg script was written by a predictive text generator. Now, if we have indeed reached the human limit of novel ways to experience our cultural heritage, then why not pass the analytical baton over to AI?
And this is a concept you've referred to before as the machine truth.
Yes, that's correct.
But as you just said, the script was written using a predictive text generator and not an AI program.
I'm working on several pieces. It's effectively a gradient, if you will, from man to machine. And this last piece occupied a liminal space between the two.
So what's your next piece going to be?
I've just been commissioned to make a hauntological vaporwave-themed installation at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, on the basis of a dream I had last night.
Last night?
Yes, I received funding for the commission 2 hours ago. The installation will be cutting-edge virtual reality viewed through a wraparound headset, though all visuals will be in the 4:3 aspect ratio, presented washed out and pockmarked by magnetic tape interference as if ripped from a 20-year-old VHS cassette.
And what happened in your dream?
I was walking through the streets of Tokyo by night in the summer of 1999. A young Leonardo DiCaprio walked beside me in silence. I asked him if we were there to promote a movie, and if so, then perhaps he should consider changing out of his iconic Romeo and Juliet suit of costume armor. I then realized that this particular incarnation of Leonardo DiCaprio had never worn anything else, as he was, in that moment, in my subconscious, the avatar for all false memories of the 1990s. So I told him, I said, Leo, you are nothing more than a static component in a pseudo-nostalgic world of neon lights, purple skies, and endless nocturnal drives down Japanese highways, dreamed up some 20 years from now, in the soporific cradle of an imagined past. A young person in 1999 drew comfort from looking ahead to a future marked by millennial optimism. A young person in 2019 draws comfort from looking back to the same place. Where is that future of the past?
All the other customers seemed to have left hours ago. We got the bill and Voldemort paid for our dinner. I treated myself to a cab on the way home. Every street and building was connected to some memory in my mind. There I was, buying my first broomstick with my father. There I was, having a butterbeer after school. When I finally came in, Hermione was home from work, and I told her everything about my dinner with Voldemort.